This is an all-in-one video on how to become better with unguided rockets. But first up, the basics. When you're using an aircraft, a majority of them fire left, right, left, right, left, right into your out of rockets. And they usually work their way in towards the middle of the aircraft. And as always, there are exceptions to the rules, like those M3 rockets fire in groups of threes. To figure this out, it's best just to take your vehicle into a practice match. Now, there's one thing about rockets that's completely out of your control and entirely in the game's control, and that's the random spread of rockets. To decrease the amount of random spread there is, I'd upgrade your weapon maintenance cruise skill. Now onto the crosshairs. Without any ballistic computers, these are pretty basic, and I feel like a lot of you guys overcomplicate them. You're basically going to use the crosshairs to either range find enemies you're targeting, and you can also use it as a vague guide of where your rockets are going to land. But first, I'm going to explain the range finding portion of the crosshair. The idea is to match the horizontal lines with an outline of a tank. The horizontal lines correspond to 800 meters, 600 meters, 400 meters, and 200 meters of distance. Now, it doesn't mean the rockets are going to go there, it just means that you're about that many meters away from the target. And using the crosshair for range finding activities, you can also determine the spread of your rockets. As you increase in your distance from the target, so will your spread. And due to my crew points, you'll see that for every 100 meters of distance, there's about 2 meters of scatter. So at the very bottom, there should be about 16 meters of scatter, and at the very top, there should be only 4. Also note, as you start firing your rockets, the amount of rockets you have is going to decrease, and they're going to be centralized towards the center of your aircraft, meaning as you get lower and lower in the amount of rockets you have on your aircraft, the more center line you can aim. And you can technically use these notches to help you with that, but they definitely aren't perfect. I would just kind of use them as a guide as you're learning your rockets. But that's just a general guide for it. Don't take that as fact. Of course, the middle of the crosshair separates your left from your right, so expect your rockets to stay on the left side or on the right side. As for vertically where the rockets are going to land, it gets kind of murky. It's very dependent on the type of rocket you're using, because the larger and the heavier the rocket, the faster it's going to fall to the ground. So with heavier rockets like HVARs or even S-24s, you're going to have to aim quite high. But for lighter rockets like the T-80P3 that I'm using right now, you actually have to aim quite low. And you'll also see the faster I'm going with my aircraft, the lower I'm aiming, because my rockets will have a lot more speed. And it works the opposite way too. If I'm a lot slower, I have to aim a lot higher. And this can also be said for the angle of attack. When you're at a very high angle of attack and looking down at the enemies, your rockets will have less drops, so you will have to aim lower. And like before, it works the opposite way. If you're coming from a very flat angle, you're gonna have to aim way higher. Now onto the gameplay tips. As you'll see when I'm playing these rockets, I want to close the distance as much as possible. This decreases the amount of spread that my rockets gain, while also allowing me to kind of aim where my rocket's going to hit, because that does play a part. To get consistent rocket destructions with smaller rockets like T-80s, you really do have to focus on hitting the vital components of a tank. Generally speaking, you'll find these in the turret and in the middle of the chassis. Additionally, you can hit fuel tanks from a top-down angle if you wish to do so, but they are a little harder to hit and a little more spread out. In my opinion, just hit the ammo rack. It works like 90% of the time. When you're making your first runs, make sure you do target SPAAs first, because they will take you out of the sky and end your run. Then after the SPAAs have been eliminated, I do suggest taking out the lighter targets and open tops, because they are quite easy to take out with rockets. Another thing to note that makes me so good at rockets is the fact that I make sure to keep my speed. If you guys don't keep your speed while playing cast, you're making yourself a huge target, because not only are you slow, but you have no cover being in the air. That being said, when you're playing rocket cast, make sure to take your time. Really extend away from the battlefield and gain back all the speed you just lost. Moving on with the tips, majority of the time, make sure you try to go top down on enemies, because you have to account for less drop, which means it's a lot easier to aim because you're only aiming horizontally at that point. Another tip I have is to have multiple rocket types on your vehicle to target multiple vehicle types. So for example, when I'm playing low tier, especially when I'm playing like the P-51 or something like that, I make sure to take both HVARs and M8 rockets. M8 rockets are high explosive and easily take out open tops like the SPAAs and the BR bracket. Then I have HVARs to take out the more heavily armored Tiger 2s. But the most important tip that I'll ever give you guys about rocket cast is to not spam your rockets. The whole point of playing rocket cast is the ability to take out multiple enemies with less weight. So in an attack run, it's very rare to see me fire any more than 3 rockets. On average, I usually fire 2 per strafe run. One to kind of gauge the range of the enemy, and then the second one to land the direct hit. Now in this video, you're probably realizing I'm avoiding certain forms of rockets, and that's on purpose. certain forms of rocket cast I would highly suggest that you avoid. The first ones I avoid are the very large ones, so they're basically the S24s or the Tiny Tims. They tend to weigh down your vehicle, and you don't get very many of them. The second ones I avoid are the rocket spam ones. They're near impossible to aim without the help of computers. And then as a beginner, I would avoid any of the dual fire rockets because they are a little harder to aim. Now in some breakdowns, we're going to put everything you just learned together. First off, my rocket is going to be coming off my right wing, and it is a little far. I am coming out of a stall, but at a high angle of attack, and the tank destroyer appears to be about 500 meters from me. And taking into account that I'm using HVARs, which are a little slower, I should be aiming somewhere in the middle. And in this case, I do have to aim for the ammo or the fuel. So we're going to fire one rocket off the left and pull up. And we're going to do it again. We have another HVAR rocket coming off the left, and this time it's far left. I am fast with a decent angle of attack, and he is about 200 meters from me, so I am aiming quite high for an HVAR. Still fire and pull up. Now we have a very light rocket coming at a high speed and a high angle of attack. He's about 700 meters from me, but I'm still aiming quite high, and it is coming off my right wing this time. So I'm gonna fire one and it misses. So now I know I was aiming too high, and we're gonna lower the aiming and fire with my left wing. And it's nice and easy like that. In real matches, it happens in an instant. Right wing, 600, low, fast. Too high, adjust, hit, and hit. Now all you have to do is take everything in this video and just put it in real matches. Now I do have a little disclaimer though. Now everything I've gone over in this video are just basic generalizations because a lot of rocket cast is extremely dependent on the rocket. So it is truly up to you to play the game and learn how each rocket flies. It's just practice.